Hello there. So today we are going to talk about fast detoxification. Is fasting a good for detoxification, or is it just right? Well, I'm here to talk to you about the benefits of fasting for detoxification, some of the what do you call them contraindications, like who shouldn't be fasting for detoxification, and some stories about the amazing benefits that you can get if you're a good candidate for fasting. And I know some of you are health practitioners and you're listening to learn more for your own clients, your own patients. And if you've had experience with fasting with your patients, with your clients, I'd love to hear about it. So if you're on live and you want to comment, if you're not on live, go ahead and comment anyway, and we'll come back and read the comments about that. I want to hear who's had experience with fasting, who has had no experience with fasting, and also who's had experience with guiding patients or knowing patients that have gone through fasting, and what are some of the benefits. So I'm Dr. Rita Marie Loscalzo, and I'm super excited about helping people and practitioners to get to the root cause of what's going on and really do things better than the way that the broken system does, which is just cover up symptoms. So let's talk about fasting. Let's just get started. So first of all, let's start with detoxification. Well, what does that mean? You know, years ago, a detox was an alcohol detox or a drug detox, and you went to a rehab center to detox yourself off of those substances. What we know now is that detoxification is a very, very, very important body function, mostly performed by the liver, but there are detox pathways in just about every place you can think of, especially the liver and the digestive tract. Certainly the kidneys part of that because it's part of eliminating, cleansing, and clearing out waste products and eliminating. So why is detox important? Have to do with health, and what do toxins have to do with health, and what does fasting have to do with this whole process? So I want to tell you a little story about what happened to me. Well, yeah. Now I'm thinking about the number of years ago. I was sick. I was in my 20s and I had all kinds of digestive issues and throat issues and nose issues and stomach issues. And nobody really had any answers for me except to take this drug or another drug. And when I finally said enough's enough, what's really going on, and I started to investigate, what I discovered was it wasn't that I was sick per se. I was toxic. I had accumulated over the course of my life toxins that couldn't be eliminated. Toxins in my food, certainly M&Ms and Cheetos and all the processed foods with lots of additives and preservatives. I had accumulated toxins from the air, which we all accumulate. Almost 40 years ago, maybe the air wasn't quite as toxic, but it was still the perfumes that people sprayed in the air, like, always had that Glade spray in the bathroom to cover up the stinks from people's poops. And the cleaning products that we used, they were not organic. We didn't have companies that did organic, and we didn't know anything about that back then. So over the course of my life, things accumulated. Toxic emotions accumulate, anger, fear, frustration, right? All of that stuff accumulates and it creates toxicity in the body. And so, in order to get well, in order to heal, excuse me, my arm is broken. And so, I'm trying to keep it comfortable while I speak. In order for us to heal properly, some of those toxins, and that's a day to day process in the body. It doesn't mean that you have to take this potion or this, that, or the other thing. Built into your body is the innate ability to cleanse things. And your liver has these great pathways, phase 1 and phase 2, that handle neutralizing them. And it works great, except when it doesn't work great. And there's a number of things that cause it to not work so well. Number one is toxic overload. A lot of those exposures happening on a regular basis, and your liver can't keep up. And one of the nasty tricks your liver plays when it can't keep up with detoxifying is it stores those toxins in your fat to protect your brain and your vital organs from getting contaminated from them. So if you ever notice that, why am I gaining weight and I'm not eating too many calories? It may be toxic exposures and you've surpassed your liver's ability to handle it. You know, one of the things I love equating it to, those of you who are my age or older, or maybe a little younger, may relate to the I Love Lucy show. And on I Love Lucy, Ethel and Lucy in a candy factory. And their job was strictly, as the conveyor belt went by them with these pieces of candy, to pick up the wrappers, wrap them up, put it back on. And so at first they were going, wow, this is easy. But they were told if any of the candies slipped by without a wrapper on them, they were going to get fired. It was no good. They were doing a really good job. And so they sped up the conveyor belt. And so they started to come a little fast, sort of okay at the beginning, and then it was faster and faster to the point where they couldn't keep up. And that's what I equate the liver. When we're exposed to environmental toxins, food toxins, emotional toxins, and the liver can't keep up, that these candies are starting to wrappers on them, right? The toxins are starting to slip by to get into the bloodstream and cause damage elsewhere. So what Ethel and Lucy did was, as they started to pass by, they would start sticking them in pockets. Then they took off their hats and they stuck the extras in the hats. And then they still couldn't keep up, and and finally they started passing by. They couldn't keep it up. And I always, now that I'm an adult and a doctor and I work in this kind of field, I just, every time I see that, I just laugh, because I didn't think of it at the time. That's you exceeding your liver detoxification capacity. That's your patients exceeding their liver detoxification pathways. And they have to be hidden somewhere, and sticking them in the hats and in the pockets. That's kind of similar to sticking them into the fat to protect. But after a while, we exceed all that, and then people get sick. And sickness can come from overexposure to toxins. Some of these toxins are more toxic than others, more dangerous than others. So that's what toxicity is. And what happens in detox is we need certain nutrients, we need hydration, we need things to help to support and improve liver detoxification. So we exceed the number one, we have too many toxins exposed to. And number two, when the liver just can't keep up, even if it's not too many toxins, but the liver isn't working properly, it might be damaged, or it might be exposed to something or whatever. But the third way, we may have a genetic weakness, a genetic tendency to not be able to detoxify certain things. Like, for example, specific genetic SNP called CYP1A2, and that details the body. So if you drink a lot of caffeine, that particular pathway is going to be stressed out, and it's not going to be able to keep up, right? And think about it. So now my phone is talking to me. That pathway is estrogen in the body, and it helps to protect you from the toxic metabolic byproducts of estrogen metabolism. And so if you spend a lot of time drinking coffee and eating chocolates and exposing yourself to a lot of caffeine, that pathway has to work overtime for that, and can't work as well on the estrogen, right? And detoxifying the estrogen. And that can lead to estrogen dominance. It can lead to overexposure to toxic forms of estrogen, which can predispose you to breast cancer, uterine cancer, and other kinds of toxic cancers related to estrogen overload. So that's just one example, right? And there's a number of them, a lot of different pathways. There's phase 1 and phase 2. And in phase 1, we're just making some of these toxins, we're putting them, adding them to water, basically. Just add water. The solution to pollution is dilution. And we do that, but some of the intermediate products that get produced when we do that are more toxic than the originals, but they're supposed to immediately go into phase 2. And phase 2 requires a lot more nutrients. It requires glutathione and methylated B vitamins and methyl donors and carriers, and acetylation donors, and specific amino acids. And so there's a lot of those things, right? So if we're deficient in any of those things, or again, if we have genetic pathway SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms, that decrease the ability of those pathways to work properly, then the detox isn't going to work. So this is enough about the detox and about the pathways. You can learn a whole lot more in other places on it, and we have lots of information on our website. But what about fasting? People talk about fasting. People think about fasting right now. It's like, oh, this modern thing, right? This new thing. No, fasting's been a millennial, right? This is an old-fashioned cleansing technique. Jesus went to the desert, fasted for 40 days. Moses went to the desert and fasted for some number of days. And it was a cleansing ritual. It was for spiritual cleansing as well as physical cleansing. And so when we think about fasting right now, the thing that's popular is intermittent fasting. Longer fasts are, people are not as familiar with longer fasts. They think longer fasts are like 2 days or 3 days. But 30 years ago, 35 years ago, almost 40 years ago, when I was sick and I wasn't getting any help from standard medicine, I sought alternatives. I found out about fasting. I found out about cleansing. I found out about nutrition. And I actually underwent a fast at a fasting institution. And I spent 35 days there. I fasted for 28 days there. I went without food, just water. No, I didn't have bulletproof coffee in the morning to get me through. No, I didn't add, anything to my water. I didn't add electrolytes even to my water. I didn't take fiber supplements. I just fasted. And I went from being a reasonable weight to an unreasonable weight. I ended my fast at 92 pounds. But I felt better than I'd ever felt in my life. I felt clearer than I'd ever felt in my life. And all the symptoms that I was trying to get rid of, the pain every time I ate, the headaches, the sinus problems, the brain fog, they all went away. I would say overnight, but it wasn't overnight. It was over 28 nights. But they all went away. And I felt better than I did. I was going through this fast. This is back in the day before the internet and before any computer stuff. And I was listening to cassette tapes of people talking about this process. So I learned about this process. And I'm like, people need to know about this. There's too many sick people out there. And I decided while I was doing this fast that I was going to quit my job, which was a very lucrative job in the computer field back in the day when very few women were in it. And I was going to go back to school. I was going to become a doctor and figure out how I can help people to do this and bring this into their lives. So fast forward today, that was back in 1985. Many of you weren't even born then. And fast forward to today in 2023, and I've done a lot of fasts since then. Never done a 28-day fast again because I never felt the need to fast periodically. The longest I think I've ever 11 days. And I periodically, at least a few times a year, usually do a 5-day water fast. Right? So this is different than what's called, which is really, intermittent fasting is a little different in my world than what is claimed to be. But intermittent fasting is considered to be, well, you fast for 16 hours. You eat for 16 hours. You fast for 16 hours. You eat for 8 hours. And that's really more time-restricted eating, but that's okay. It's all, you call it tomato, I call it tomato, whatever, it doesn't matter. But it's a phenomenal technique for cleansing. A lot of people just use it for weight loss so that they're not eating as much, which is fine. But what happens when you're fasting at a certain point in the fast, somewhere around 16 to 18 hours, you enter a state that's called autophagy. Your body's saying, oh, there's nothing coming in. What can I do? And it starts to basically gobble up old, decrepit, diseased, in need of repair cells. And when it does that and goes into this state of autophagy, you're starting to do some healing. Now, if you're doing 16, 18 hours a day and then you eat, you turn it on and off, which still can be beneficial, very beneficial. But where you really get into some amazing benefits is if you can extend it longer, like 24 hours, 36 hours, 48 hours. But something happens. Maximum autophagy is said to occur somewhere around that 2-day mark. And so if you can be in that maximum autophagy for a couple of days, then you're going to accelerate the healing. You're going to accelerate the breakdown of the tissues. You're going to help to take away, some of those cancerous cells that are not serving you well. They go away. Of course, there's usually weight loss in this period of time. The cells can get the signal to repair, and you're not exposing yourself anymore, right? Unless you're living in a toxic environment, and spraying all the air fresheners and using toxic. Way to do it is to refrain from putting any of those toxins on your body or in your body during that period of time. Right? So you've got the ability to cleanse your body. So maybe you want to do like 3-4 days a week, do a 16 to 18 hour fast to just, peek into autophagy and then come out, peek into autophagy and come out. And then maybe once a month, you want to do anywhere from 2 to 4 to 5 day fast, right? Once a month for a 5-day fast, unless you're very overweight, it can be debilitating. But a 3-day fast, right? 48-hour fast, 36-hour fast. You go into autophagy, dip in, and then go even further into maximum, and then you come out again. And then you keep doing this. And you do this over and over again. You're going to find that your detoxification pathways, you're going to find that your metabolism actually gets faster, not slower. It's when you're fasting all the time and when you're starving yourself all the time, like not getting enough calories on a regular basis, that slows down. So it makes you more efficient, your organ function, etc. But there are people who just don't do well with it. I did well with it. The first 3 days were hard. It's like, oh, I just need to eat. But past that, I adapted really well. Some people adapt really well. And there's a couple of genetic SNPs that I've talked about in a recent presentation that make it so that you are more suited to fasting. Your body is able to, keep the energy up and not feel really messed up when you're fasting. Right? That's me. I have those particular genetic SNPs. If you don't, then you might be much more slowly adapting to it and not going into those longer fasts. And that may be you who's a little bit of something that take you out of ketosis and out of autophagy, but just like gets the edge off. And there's a number else talks about stuff like that with, MCT oil, and other practitioners will talk about that. But the true deep cleanse is water only. But don't set yourself up to be like, I have to do that or nothing. No, you do what you can. And even just refraining from the toxic foods for some period of time. So one of the things that Dr. Valterongo talks about is what he calls the fasting mimicking diet. And he did some research, and it's a 5-day program, specific macronutrients and calories. And people were getting into what looked like a fasted state, even without fasting. He created a packaged food called Prolon. I've tried it. It's not for me. It's just packaged powdered food, and it's, $250 for 5 days. And it costs me $0 if I'm going to fast. So it's not my thing. But what I did was I created, for people who want to do something like that, I created something called fasting while feasting. And it's basically food, whole foods based on the exact ratios that he came up with. And we've had tremendous with that. And then you can do that once a month, right? You can do it once a month. It's real food that you find at your grocery store. And it's cut back and it's specific, and people find themselves full. And it still stimulates those detox pathways. If you're someone who has really good phase 1 detoxification, but sluggish phase 2, and that can usually be determined by genetics and also by specific chemicals, measurements of glutathione and all these sorts of things, then you might want to go slowly, not go too fast, because you're going to feel like those, the detox symptoms people talk about, like achy and headachy and feverish. You can have some of those symptoms support phase 2. And there's powders and potions and supplements you can use to support that beyond the scope of this particular presentation. So fasting and detox. Fasting can be an amazing tool for detox. I've used it myself. I've used it with hundreds of clients and patients over the last, 30 plus years of practice that I've been in. And it can be wonderful, but it's not for everybody. So find out if it's for you. The way you do that is you experiment with intermittent fasting and just like gradually increase. So if you go 12 hours between your meals right now, try going 13. That works, go to 14. That works, go to 15. That works, go to 6. Increasing it, if you get to the point where it's just not working, then you stick with that. You go backwards to the place where it was working, and then you can try increasing it. But not everybody is intended to fasting. Not everybody is going to have the same reactions. But it's an amazing tool for your family members and for your patients. So if you're interested in learning more about our fasting while feasting, go ahead and just comment. And I'll have one of my team members put the link in the chat. I don't see any comments right now. If you have any comments or questions, put them in the chat, in the comments. And otherwise, I would say consider that cleansing is one of your most important tools to get and stay healthy. And fasting can be a great tool for that. So consider it, research it, put your comments down below as to what your experience has been. And until next time, be your unstoppable self. Thank you.